Starting Thursday, a fictional state, Veishnoriya, a distillation of the Kremlin's darkest fears about the West, has become the target of the combined military might of Russia and its ally, Belarus. The nation was invented to provide an enemy to confront during a 6-day joint military exercise that's expected to be the biggest display of Russian military power since the end of the Cold War. The exercise, known as ZAPAD-2017, is the latest iteration of a series of training maneuvers that began under the Soviet Union in the 1970s. After a long break following the collapse of communism, ZAPAD was revived in 1999 and then was expanded after Vladimir Putin became president at the end of that year. ZAPAD, West in Russian, used to include military forces from countries under the Warsaw Pact, the Soviet-led military alliance whose non-Soviet members have now all joined NATO. Today, the military exercise has shrunk to just 2 participants, Russia and Belarus, but is still viewed warily by military planners in the West. In this video, Defense Updates looks at 5 aspects which make ZAPAD 2017 scary. Let's get started.
Number 5.
The West has been bracing for the Russian exercises for months. Then, late last month, a scenario outlined by the military leadership in Minsk, the capital of Belarus, described the main task for this year's ZAPAD program: to repel aggression by Veishnoriya, a fictional country that's backed by the West and intent on driving a wedge between Russia and Belarus. The scenario also includes 2 other fake countries, Vladimir and Veishnoriya, which form a coalition with Veishnoriya to menace Russian security. The Baltic states of Poland, which fear that the fictional nations invented by ZAPAD planners are thinly disguised proxies for their own countries, say that they believe the number of Russian troops taking part in ZAPAD 2017 could reach 100,000.
Number 4.
It comes at a time of deteriorating relations between Russia and the West, with Washington and Moscow trading diplomatic penalties seemingly weekly. From bitter experience over Russian election meddling and military adventurism in recent years, Western officials have developed a deep distrust of the Kremlin's motives and its proclamations of good intentions. There are fears that Moscow may be moving far more troops into Belarus than it intends to withdraw, establishing a permanent military presence there on the border with NATO countries. And officials in the Baltics and Poland have voiced alarm that the exercises could be used as a cover for Russian aggression, as happened in 2014 when Moscow staged large-scale exercises to camouflage preparations for its annexation of Crimea and intervention on the side of pro-Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine.
Number 3.
Moscow and Minsk insist that this week's ZAPAD exercise will involve just 12,700 troops. That means that, like all previous Russian military exercises since the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, it weighs in just under the 13,000 troop threshold and is therefore free of observers from the West. But Estonia's defense minister, Margus Šakna, has pointed to a tender issued this year by Russia's Ministry of Defense for more than 4,000 railway wagons to transport military equipment and soldiers to Belarus. The figure suggests that far bigger military contingents would be on the move than declared, the minister said, a sign that Moscow may intend to leave some behind. The U.S. military has echoed such worries, with Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who heads the Army forces in Europe, describing ZAPAD as a possible Trojan horse that would send in Russian forces but not take them out.
Number 2.
The 3 fake countries at the center of the ZAPAD 2017 drills have taken on a virtual life of their own timeline. While it is not clear who's behind it, a clearly pro-Western satirical Twitter account issues regular announcements in the name of the Veishnoriya Minister of Foreign Affairs and displays pictures of the fake country's passport, flag, national currency, and other national symbols, all of them invented. We are deeply concerned about the concentration of Belarusian military equipment at the borders of Veishnoriya, reads one message posted by the non-existent nation's foreign ministry. Others include a call for volunteers from brotherly countries to repel an invasion from the east and warnings that Veishnorians are warlike beasts who will not surrender. Veishnoriya also has a lively account on VKontakte, the Russian equivalent of Facebook, which posts of beautiful Veishnorian women and natives in what is said to be traditional Veishnorian clothing. It also has fierce supporters on Facebook, where one fan provided a tongue-in-cheek historical note about the non-existent country's martial spirit. Throughout its history, Veishnoriya hasn't lost a single war.
Number 1.
A declassified CIA report on Soviet military exercises prepared in the 1980s said that deception was always a central feature of Moscow's training program, with Soviet forces deploying elaborate ruses to camouflage the real number of troops and purpose of their major exercises. It noted that a Soviet naval exercise designed to practice landing troops on islands off Denmark, a member of NATO, had been disguised as training devoted to the defense of Soviet shores. Measures taken to deceive NATO, the CIA report said, include leaking fake information on Soviet radio frequencies monitored by the West and planting disinformation through human agents. In some cases, the Soviet military deployed special camouflage forces that operated in totally different regions from those taking part in a real exercise, so as to mislead NATO intelligence. It also generated phony radio traffic in a manner intended to deceive foreign intelligence to the type of the exercise, its aim, conduct, etc. Foreign observers from NATO were never allowed to watch Soviet-era ZAPAD exercises, and diplomats based in Moscow were barred from visiting regions where the exercises were taking place. This year will be no different. Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, said he could not speculate about the real purpose of ZAPAD-2017, saying that this would become clear only once it was over next week. At the same time, he noted the exercise fits a pattern of a more assertive Russia that is exercising more aggressively, and through its actions in Crimea and eastern Ukraine has shown that it is willing to use military force against its neighbors. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.